Hey, so well, welcome everybody. I'll just share my screen to start with. Okay, can we all see that?
Yes.
Yes, all good. Yep.
Beautiful. All righty. Well, welcome everybody. And this is we've done a few of these Red Breeds genomic seminars so far as we've gone through the Red Breed genomic journey. And I suppose this is the best one because this is the one at well, not quite at the end of the journey. This genomic journey never really ends, but the good part of post the delivery of the first set of official Red Breed genomics for Australian farmers. So quite momentous for all of us here at DataGene. So we've got a farmer co-host today, which is Sam Graham. And Sam's probably familiar to many of you, but I'm going to ask Sam to introduce himself and give us a bit of a rundown on himself and his operation.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, DataGene, for hosting this event, this webinar on red genomics. And it is an exciting day because we have now got red genomics in Australia. So we really appreciate the work of DataGene. My name is Sam, and we farm in Australia, in New South Wales. Our farm is 2 hours south of Sydney on the east coast. We milk 400 red cows in a pasture-based system. So generally pasture all year round and a moderate grain intake of 1.5 tonnes per cow per year. We're part of a program called GINFO, which many Australian residents will know about, but it's a unique data collection program that herds are involved in to get more data for projects like this for genomics for our breeding values. And it involves herd testing, classification, and genomic collection from our herd. We're extremely keen here to see the red genomics, and I'm really excited about today and this month being red genomics being released publicly. We really believe the red cow's a profitable cow and just so easy to manage, and I'm excited to see these genomics taking our breed forward. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Sam. So whenever you feel the urge to add anything, just jump in, mate, and please, yeah, don't be bashful, and just hop in and add your perspective on anything that you think is worthwhile. So our journey so far, and this really has been a journey, probably not so much for me, but certainly for some others on the DataGene team, because I only come in partway through this journey. But you know, we started way back in December with some initial test runs and then discussions with some stakeholders, the bull companies, breed societies and the like. And then we took this to our genetic standing committee, and they basically ratified what we were doing and gave us the industry green light to proceed. And following that, we had our first private release of genomics in around April. Now that private release of genomics was useful, but it was only based on Australian information. So it gave us a little bit of an insight, and it gave us the opportunity to test the model and hopefully iron out some issues along the way. But it was good, but it wasn't as good as it could be. And it probably really, we hit our straps when we integrated the interval data with the July private release of genomics. And I think once, and you know, the feedback I had from farmers is once we integrated the interval data with the local data, we started to see what we expected to see with the red breed genomics. That information went out to just the owners of the animals, and then that information basically morphed into, with another run and the addition of some more animals, the first official release of genomics this August. And the feedback so far has been really positive about the ranking of animals, the increase in reliability, all those sorts of things, which is what we expected to happen through this process. So that data is now out there, and hopefully people will start to see better. So in terms of what makes this a bit more unique than your average breeding value is the fact that we've used some of the latest tools to create these red genomic evaluations. So those tools are the single-step genomic evaluation, which is the first time we've implemented that in Australia. And that is really the gold standard genomic evaluation tool that we have access to. And I suppose you could say that the red breed group have been the guinea pigs. If you want to be a bit more positive, you've been the trailblazers in this space, because we've used this opportunity to create red breed genomics to refine this technique, and eventually we'll start to apply single step evaluations to the Jerseys and the Holsteins and other breeds as well. One of the features of single step is it allows us to account for selection bias. So we know that with genomic testing, people are not, people tend to test their better animals as a rule. Pardon me. So within the system, that creates a bit of a bias, and single step has the ability to account for that bias. But the other thing it allows us to do is for those genomic breeding values and the influence of those genomic breeding values to flow into the breeding values of ungenotyped animals. So those ungenotyped animals can get the benefit from the genotyped animals within the population. The other step forward in this space is the work that the group at AgriBio, DairyBio have done in creating a new chip, a higher density chip that's got a lot more markers in it. And that is something that's going to be beneficial for breeds with smaller populations in terms of getting those markers closer to the traits we're interested in, and creating a more robust, helping us to create a more robust evaluation for those breeds. So the two really important steps that the red breed group have helped us to pioneer, and we'll be then applying some of this technology into the other breeds as we go along. Just, oh, by the way, that's one of Sam's cows there, is it not, Sam?
One of the favourites.
So who is she?
She's Katie by Finax, and she's the dam of ARB Hilly, which a lot of people in Australia have used. Yep.
Be nice to have a herd of those. So which breeds are getting red breed genomics? Well, back when we started this process, it looked like it was only going to be the Aussie red group, but we've expanded that now, and basically dairy shorthorns, Illawarras and Ayrshires are also now getting the benefit of red genomics, which I think is really a great thing, especially given the interconnection, especially in our country, the interconnection of those breeds. But also when you think about where we are globally, they're all in that red breed, in that RDC group. And so it kind of makes sense to treat them as a whole. So which traits are we creating these breeding values for? We're creating them for the traits that we've got currently the most information for. So that's our production trait, or the traits that are derived from herd recording, basically. So milk, fat, protein, and cell count are the traits that we've got enough information to create these breeding values for. With time and more records and all those sorts of things, we'll be able to expand that to other traits. But currently, these are the traits that we've got confidence we can create a sound, solid breeding value for. Obviously, ASI, our Australian Selection Index, is an index that's based on milk, fat, and protein. So that's a wholly genomic index. And these 4 traits also contribute to BPI and HWI. So they're kind of fortifying those 2 indexes with some more reliable information and increasing the reliability of those indexes, giving us more confidence to use them. So which animals will get genomic breeding values? Obviously all the ones that are genotyped, so the genotyped bulls and cows. But as I said earlier, one of the advantages of single step is that genomic information to flow through the population. So if you've got a young animal who's got genotyped parents, they will receive a parent average that is based on the genomic breeding value. So there's an additional benefit there through the use of single step. So one of the obvious outcomes when we genomically test is we get an increase in reliability of our breeding values. Now these reliability increases only look modest. You know, when we look at protein for young bulls, we go from 43% reliable up to 59%. However, when you look at the individual results through the ABV list, you'll see some young bulls pushing well up into the high 60s and even into the low 70s for reliability for production traits now. And they're obviously the animals that are more closely related to our reference population. And so they're achieving higher reliability. So, but those reliability increases, I think, are reasonably significant and will help give people greater confidence when it comes to selecting young bulls to use in their herd. But also when we look at the heifers, we can see similar levels of reliability increase across the board. So that starts to consolidate our or you know, improve our ability to use this genomic information to make some better on-farm decisions that we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. When it comes to older cows, cows with 3 or more lactations, you don't see a lot of change in the reliability of their breeding values, because their performance is already telling us something about their genetics, especially their performance when compared to their herd mates. So we get a little bit of fortification of their breeding value and the reliability of their breeding value through the addition of genomics, but the greatest benefit is what it does for our young stock, our young bulls, and also our young heifers in terms of improving the reliability of their breeding values.
And just to comment, Pete, this is Peter Williams. Just a comment, probably taking your current hat off and putting your past hat on, which is not that long ago. In terms of selecting red bulls, you were basically relying on just parent average, weren't you? Like there was no genomics included. So even though it looks modest, I think the significance is that those increases are quite, quite meaningful when it comes to selecting that next group of young bulls, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, in some ways, you know, I was a sire analyst for a long time. Probably some people might say too long. To be honest, genomics, it changed the game quite a bit. You know, and in some ways, it took a little bit of the fun out of it. The last bastion of the fun was within the red breeds, where you basically had parent averages, cows in the paddock, all those sort of things. It was old school sire analyst stuff. Now the science is starting to kick in, and that's a much better situation for farmers than relying on me to be picking your bulls for you. But so yeah, I think it's a much better, stronger position for the AI companies now to select the better bulls, and we'll talk about that actually in a slide or two, and just be able to show you how those decisions will change with the addition of this genomic information. So yeah, no, it's a good point, Pete. So just in terms of some data sources, and one of the key numbers here is that bulls with genotypes, we've got 778 now, bulls with genotypes. There's still some more out there, so we need to still gather up some more of those bulls that have got genotypes and daughters milking in Australia. It's pleasing to see we've got over 7,000 cows now genotyped. And again, that's another space that we need to work on to try and get more cows into our system so that they can contribute to our genomic population. And those cows are coming out of 142 different herds. think it's interesting also to note down here, and I didn't highlight it, but there's over 3 million test day records used in this analysis. So that's a lot of data, but we can handle more. So, and that's the challenge, I think, and we'll talk about data challenges in a minute. I just popped this in this morning. It was come out of Pete and I were having a conversation before this, and I thought to myself, I'll just check and see how many of the red cows that have been genotyped actually on the top of the ABV list back from August. And it was really pleasing just to go back and run this list quickly out of DataVat. And we can see all these cows that are highlighted here with the LOGs. They were all genomically tested prior to these breeding values coming out. And we can see how they're pretty much dominating the top end of the breeding value list, which is what we want to see. So you think about, you know, if I put my old hat on, my old bull company hat on, there's the go-to list for me as a sire analyst of the cows that I need to be thinking about, making sure that, you know, maybe they're not getting sex semen, maybe they're getting some conventional semen so that they can breed a bull that we can genomically test and turn into the next generation of young sires to enter AI. You know, and there's some good numbers there when you're talking about these high 300s and into the 400s. I mean, they're genetically elite cattle in this population, and so we need to be thinking about what we do with them and how we breed them. And it's nice to see, Sam, a number of Boland's animals at the pointy end there, and I suppose that's come from your work within the Ginfo project.
Yeah, but there's some strong competition there, so it's not all Boland's cows.
And that also, Sam, would have come from cows that you probably collected tail hair from some years ago, thinking that it was never going to come to fruition. But no.
I think 8 or 9 years, Pete, we've been waiting, pulling tail hairs for.
So we didn't lose the hair. You can be rest assured.
So this is the data challenge, you know, and genomics is a data hungry technology, and to make this a better technology, we just simply need more data. And a bit of a shout out to the bull companies that have transferred genotypes, especially just recently. I know, you know, there's some companies that have had genotypes sitting in the system for a long time, waiting, a bit like Sam's Ginfo cows, sitting there waiting for the day that we're able to do this, and thank you to them. But, you know, we shook the tree just recently prior to the first release of Red Genomics, and the bull companies sort of stumped up and sent us genotypes, sent us some hair and semen samples that we could use to get some more bulls into the reference population. We know there's still some more out there, and we're going to still keep knocking on your door and shaking that tree to try and get some more of those genotypes and some more samples, because we have the capacity to create genotypes from semen samples of any bull with milking daughters. So, you know, if it's an Illawarra bull that is, you know, no longer around, you know, if we can grab semen from him. If there's semen sitting in somebody's tank of an old bull, that stuff is really useful to us. I mean, one example, Leanne from DataGene, Leanne Monks, she had a friend in Queensland, an old Illawarra breeder who had semen sitting in his tank. We were able to get that semen and add those bulls into our reference population by grabbing that semen, genotyping it, and now we have a new group of old Illawarra bulls, some of which are the ancestors of many of our Aussie red cows as well, that are in the back of our reference population. So any of that sort of semen sitting around is a real, it's a bit of a gold mine for us, really. So things also for the Ginfo participants now, things are getting real, because all that work, like Pete said, you know, Sam's hair samples for, you know, the last 7 or so years, where he's been diligently collecting them and others, because, you know, that stuff is now coming to fruition. So the challenge now is for those guys to keep sampling, sample sooner, all those sorts of things, so that we can get more calves, more 2-year-olds into the system and improve the reliability. And even just since that July private release, we've added 155 new bulls and 370 new cows into the population. So that's a real bonus, and that was over the course of basically a month. So if we can keep adding at that rate, which it's unrealistic to think that we can keep adding bulls at that rate, but certainly if we can keep adding cows at that rate, that's going to be a real bonus. So this is circling back to Pete's point before about finding better bulls.
Sorry, Pete, just to go back to you looking for old semen samples or whatever,
yeah.
Do the owners of those straws have to pay for the genomic analysis?
Definitely not. And in fact, we'll work out ways of collecting that semen from them, you know, whether it's Pete Williams or myself or, you know, our contacts. We'll work out ways of getting that semen down to AgriBio and getting it genotyped at our cost, basically. So, yeah, no, that's a good point, Leanne. They're important animals, and we need to facilitate getting them into the system. That's not something that it should be at the farmer's expense by any means. Yeah. So, putting my old sire analyst hat back on again, one of the things I thought about was, what are the different decisions that I would make between April and now with the advent of red breed genomics? So if we said, well, okay, let's set an arbitrary cutoff of 250 BPI. So we'd select bulls that are going to be better than 250 BPI. So across the bottom line of this graph, we've got the April BPI scale, and up the side we have the August BPI scale. So we can see that there's, in this green triangle, we've got bulls that are no-brainers. We would have selected them based on their parent average down here in April, and we would select them on the basis of their genomic breeding value. So they would have got in either way. What we have got here, though, is a couple that we probably, in hindsight, you'd probably avoid, you know. So there was a bull here that had a parent average of over 300, and he's now got a genomic breeding value for BPI below 200. So he's one that you certainly would have liked to avoid. And this guy here, similarly, you know, he was over 250 and now he's down around 200. So, you know, it means that we can refine those decisions and make better decisions around that selection time for young bulls. Similarly, we've got a few bulls up here that we might have thought about including. So, you know, this bloke here was way down between 100 and 150 BPI in April, and he's now over 250. So he's probably got a different sort of a pedigree, and, you know, sneaking over 250, different pedigree, you know, that kind of lights up sire analyst's eyes a bit. And similarly, this bloke here, you know, was under 250 BPI now, and he's pushing up towards 300. So there's 3 useful bulls there that we've found, and there's a couple of bulls here that we believe probably weren't going to live up to expectation that we can delete. And so just having that refinement in terms of bull selection is a real positive, I think. And then the next step is, amongst these guys in the green triangle, we can start to use them to breed the next generation of young bulls. And we can do that with a whole lot more confidence now than what we had when we were just working off parent averages and go, you know, she's a lovely cow and it's, you know, he's the best bull out of Scandinavia, all that sort of stuff. Now we've got something that's a lot more concrete to work with. And that's going to be a real boon for driving our genetic gain within the red population.
And on that too, Pete, which is hugely impressive, if we were to turn all those dots into heifers, so they weren't bulls anymore, they were heifers, what Sam is looking at is exactly the same thing, isn't it? In terms of not bulls he'd keep, but heifers he would keep.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So the exciting part is, Sam, that it gives you exactly the same look to the future, in that some heifers that you thought might be looking red hot on parent average may not be quite as good, or some heifers coming from down a little lower can actually rise up.
Another great selection tool that we can use. You're exactly right.
So let's talk a little bit about heifer testing. And it's interesting, there's a number of benefits of genomically testing heifers. It's funny when you start talking to people, though, the top one here, the parentage verification, is one that in the minds of farmers ranks really high. It's just, you know, we've all got those, everyone gets those calves that, you know, was it hers, was it hers? Well, you can know for certain now with the use of genomic testing who she actually belongs to. And we all make mistakes. You know, our misidentification nationally is sort of running around that 15% even higher mark. Genomic testing is a great way of tidying that up, and accuracy basically leads to better decisions.
And you're especially right with the reds, Peter, there. Like, you can turn around and there's a red calf on the ground. You don't get to see them being born.
Yeah. You know, and in terms of calf rearing, selling decisions, breeding program, and how you manage a breeding program, we'll talk about that a little bit shortly. You know, all of these things are benefits, but the greatest benefit comes from early testing. So the earlier you test, the earlier you get this information, the earlier you can make decisions, the greater the benefit to your farming operation. So the sampling these days is so easy, and I'm just going to run a quick little video just to show you about, to demonstrate the whole tissue sampling side of things, and hopefully the technology won't let us down. But these days, I mean, we talked about hair samples with Sam and the Ginfo animals, but these tissue sampling units and the ease at which you can use those is a real step forward. So I'll click on this video and hopefully it'll all work. I'm just going to get back to my presentation. Oh, there we go. So that looked pretty easy in my world, but I'm not the one that has to do it. But yeah, I think the use of the TSUs is a real big step forward in terms of sampling. So it's nice and simple. And yeah, if you're thinking of going down that path, talk to the genomic service providers, and we've got a list of those at the end of the presentation that you can talk to about getting access to these sampling kits and getting some samples into. So how do we make genomics work for your herd. And we've got to recognise that each herd situation is unique, and you've all got different challenges, different breeding goals, different economics, the ability to market young stock. All those things will determine how you utilise genomics within your herd, and to tailor or work your needs into a program that will help you benefit most from utilising genomic technology. So if we think about a heifer strategy within a herd, and Sam, this is where I'll need you to kick in a bit too. If we think about a herd, we're going to have animals that are, and we've genomically tested them or tested your heifers, your group of heifers. We're going to have heifers that are at the low end of the group. We're going to have heifers at the high end of the group. And most of the heifers are going to be in the middle of the group, okay? So by genomically testing, we can have more confidence that we're picking out the higher end animals within the herd, and we can have more confidence that we're identifying the lower end animals in the herd. And when we start to combine genomic technology with the likes of sex semen, we can really start to exploit the benefit of genomic technology. So we can make those top end heifers to sex semen. So we're getting heifers out of our best heifers. The middle group, you might consider conventional semen. And the bottom end, well, you might do a few things with, but you might consider not rearing them and saving on rearing costs. You know, we know that you know, rearing costs somewhere in the order of $2,000 a head to get a heifer into the herd. 10 that you don't rear, it's a lot of money. So, you know, there's some, but that's not the only strategy. You know, there's a number of ways you can slice and dice this, and you guys probably know more about that than I do. Sam, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's a really good strategy you presented. Yeah, really looking at which ones are going to perform. I think that's the key at the moment, is going, there's some really low genomic heifers there. What are we going to do? Because yeah, they're probably not worth breeding from.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is, you know, if you can identify them at that age, you're probably doing a couple of things. You're not joining them, and they're not creating a heifer calf. And, you know, if it's a heifer calf, you all keep them. So then, you know, you at some point in time, you've got to draw a line and say, your genetics aren't going to enter my herd anymore. And if you can do it at that point, that starts to save you a lot of money. If you know, if this girl down the bottom end here has joined and she has a heifer calf, you're likely going to keep it, and then she's going to have a heifer calf. At some point, you know, the earlier you chop them out of your breeding program, the sooner you get their ordinary genetics out of your herd. And so, you know, having these sorts, using genomics in this way and having these sort of strategies can save you not just the one-off rearing costs, but, you know, the fact that you knew you shouldn't have carved that heifer in because you're 3 months into a lactation and you hate her. Because bad heifers generally produce more bad heifers. So the sooner you make the decision, the better off you're going to be. But similarly within your herd, you know, if you've got your herd genomically tested, you can do the same sort of thing. You know, you can identify the elite end and look at young cows with better repro performance and join them to sex semen and get heifers out of the better end of your herd. Again, look at the middle part of your herd for some conventional semen and save some semen costs there. But the low end, you might consider the value add, and, you know, because you're generating heifers out of your heifers, you're generating heifers out of the top end of the herd, you can make that lower end to beef bulls, for example, and value add to those calves. And I don't need to tell you what beef animals or cull animals are making at the moment, but they're making a hell of a lot of money. So whilst it may not be attractive to do it all the time, certainly at the moment, there's a lot of value add to be had by creating some beef cross animals. And coming out of red animals, out of you know, the red sector of the population is probably you've got an advantage over some of the other breeds in terms of growth rates and things like that. So I think it's a real advantage for red breeders to utilise those bottom end cows for a bit of beef production. But again, you know, how you do this is all dependent upon your circumstances, your ability to maybe run surplus animals. All that sort of stuff will have a bearing on your decisions around how you apply this technology and these strategies within your herd. In terms of getting access to results, we've got to put a plug in for DataVat here, Pete. So if you've signed up for DataVat, you'll be able to see all your genomic results, or all your results basically, on DataVat. And when you go in there, you can choose bull or cow, and you can either choose, you know, red dairy breed group or individuals. And if you click on the cow side of things, you'll see your cows there. It's a great way of getting easy access to all your information. Similarly, your genomic service providers, if you're going down the testing route with those guys, they'll provide you with a range of reports that you can slice and dice your results with as well. But DataVat will have anything that you've genomically tested will end up on DataVat, and it's also a great way of creating some bull lists using that information to help your bull selection. We haven't got a slide in here on the app, Pete, but the other great tool we've got is the Good Bulls app that you can download on your phone. That's another great way of identifying bulls and making short lists of bulls that you can talk to your semen providers about, and in terms of using those in your herd. So where are we at? So this is the big question. When's the next run going to be? So because we're creating these genomic breeding values for reds a little bit outside of our standard system, they're not being run weekly like the Holsteins and the Jerseys are currently. And where we're committed are these red circles. So we're definitely committed to doing another official run in December, another official run in April, and another one in the following August. We're happy to run interim runs in between those official runs, but that will be dependent upon the amount of genotypes and samples that we receive. If there's not many samples, we may decide to skip it. But if there's strong interest and plenty of genotypes coming through the pipeline, we'll be looking to do some interim runs in between those official runs so that we can get more information through to you.
Peter, can I just ask, sorry, it's Carmel here.
Hi, Carmel.
What sort of numbers are you looking for to make those interim runs feasible?
Ah, that's a good question. Are you there, Tui? You can help answer that one. Tui's off.
Difficulty to find an unmute button.
There you are.
I think it's more herd decision. Herd, are you there?
I'm there. I don't think we've discussed that clearly. I think we would be looking at a few hundred cows to make it worthwhile. And bulls, I guess it's gonna depend if they're sort of active bulls. I think if we've got 10 or 20 or so, that would make worth our effort.
Yeah, if they're young bulls that are potential to be selected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter, it's Graham Hamilton. I've got a couple of questions I would like to run past if I could. Firstly, in the past, I've been critical of the accuracy of the ABVs we've been getting on our cows, but I must say in the last year, when I look at the valuations we're getting, it actually corresponds more closely with my own evaluation of our cows. So in that way, I think that there's not the widespread that there once was, and it's becoming more predictable. And that's just looking at cow performance within our herd and matching it against the breeding value. But the genomic predictions we have now are based on the production traits. What's the future for all the other traits, the other 35 or whatever they are, the type, the management, all those traits? Is there a program that says how long they're going to be before we can see some progress on those?
That's a good question. I might actually throw that one to Hurt, because he's probably got a better handle on the amount of data that's in the system currently. But my short answer will be we need a reasonable bit more, but Hurt's probably got a better handle on that than me.
Yeah, Pete. I think it's a combination of things. I think one important thing is how the feedback we get from the breeders in the farmers at the moment, whether they're interested in it. It's very hard to predict, just going on the numbers, how much more reliability we would get for certain traits. And so I think it's going to be mainly a sort of a balance on what is the demand for it and how much effort is it for us to do it. We've designed now the system, so we know largely how to run it. But like we said earlier, part of it is still run manually, so that becomes a big hurdle to do lots of traits. So it's going to be just a matter of how much we can automate over time and move that forward.
I suppose if I want to make a comment, okay, we're making progress on those productivity traits. At the same time, we're also classifying all our heifers. And we're noticing that almost sometimes there are heifers that are inverse. They've got good breeding and production values, but the classification on udder or feet or something is pretty ordinary. And it's no good taking all the production traits forward if we haven't got the structure of the cow that can match it and carry it along. So we're looking for the next bit to add to what's been put forward here. And don't take it away. I think this is a great move, but just looking to the next step, I suppose. And my second question,
I'd add to that, Graham. Coming out of the AI industry, and this is not having a go at the AI guys, because I understand implicitly the commercial pressures they're under. I don't think as a breed or a breed group, you can just rely on the breed societies the bull companies to pick up classifications through LTEs. I think, if you guys want to add data into that space, there's got to be a commitment from the individual breeders to go out and classify their cows and add that data into the system to make sure that there's as much data available as possible, rather than, and I know you do because you enjoy classifying cows, but not everybody does, and I would implore them to score their cows and get that data into the system, because if you're going to rely on the bull companies, they're basically going to do what they need to do to get a result to market an animal, as opposed to basically collecting data just for the sake of collecting data. So, there's a shared responsibility in that space that we need to encourage breeders to get involved in classification and add some more data into the system.
And just to add another point to Graham's comment, all the traits, Graham, so all the traits we measure are actually included in the indices. So things like fertility and all the type traits, we're actually including them in the BPI, but they're traditional breeding values. So they're not genomic assisted. So we've got our 4 genomic assisted traits, but we don't just leave it at that. We actually incorporate, which was one of the challenges, we incorporate all the standard traits. So things like fertility, all of that is still included in the BPI, but at a standard or a traditional evaluation.
And I notice pleasingly that we've got the 4 red breeds involved in this work, and Pete, you mentioned before that if we had a bull or a female that's somewhat outside the general population DNA, I suppose, that its reliability is going to be somewhat less. What can we say about the Illawarra Ayrshire and Dairy Shorthorn in that case? Because the linkages vary a lot between the Australian Reds, for instance, and particularly perhaps the Ayrshire.
Yeah, so one of the things we've been encouraging the Ayrshire Society to do, and they've been very helpful with us in terms of getting more Ayrshire reference animals into the system. So quite a few of the bulls that came in recent times in terms of their genotypes were Ayrshire bulls, and so they've been added, and we've now got a list of bulls that the Ayrshire guys have got, and they're out hunting for semen samples for those bulls to try and improve that. Now, if the links aren't strong to the Aussie red cows, the addition of those animals won't make a huge difference, but it will make a big difference to the Ayrshire breeders by having more of their genetics that is common to their population within this data set. So you guys will benefit from animals that are more related to the Aussie Reds, but by adding in Ayrshires and adding in Illawarras, those guys will get greater benefit through better reliability for the animals that are related more to their populations.
All right, I think that comes to the end of my questions. So thanks very much, all.
No worries. Thanks, Graham. So just in terms of if you want to go down the heifer testing paths, there's a number of providers out there that you can talk to. And some of them are online here with us today. But there's any number of service providers that will help you and walk you through the whole genomic testing process and provide you with some nifty tools at the end of it to analyse your breeding value results. And like I say, you could also get them out of DataVat. And so if you want to sign up to DataVat, just let myself or Pete know, and we can get that organised for you. Number of service providers that you can talk to, and they'll help guide you through the process. Now, if you want to know more about this, because obviously we wouldn't have covered everything today in this short presentation, but there is a wealth of information on the DataGene website currently, including the video that we saw of Xavier Parkinson earlier, but there's one with John Pekin from down in Western Victoria talking about how he uses genomics within his herd. There's another one there on how to take genomic samples. The one that's obscured here is, I wanted to call him Hugh McCluggage. I'm too much of a Brisbane Lions man. That's Sam McCluggage, and talking about how he uses genomics within his herd to market surplus females and things like that. So there's some good resources amongst those videos. There's some case studies that you can look at as well, and some tech notes, including one about how to use the tissue sampling unit if you want to go back over that again. So there's a heap of information on that DataGene web page about genomic technology that you can tap into after this if you want to link on. If you go to Heifer Genomics, it'll take you there. If you get an email from any of us from DataGene, we've usually got that link in our email these days as well to take you to the same place if you're looking for more information. So just some people to thank. Obviously, along the way, this has been a real collaborative effort. And there's a heap of data suppliers. Anyone who's got red cows that has genotyped them, the GSPs, the bull companies, herd test centres, the software providers, the breed societies, and obviously the Ginfo herds are critical to this. The Dairy Bio Research team, which I know some of them are online at the moment. I'm sure I saw Iona McLeod's name pop up a little earlier. They've done a power of work, especially developing that new higher density chip. The Genomic Acceleration Project team. But I've got a special shout out to the guys at DataGene, especially Hurt, and Tui that have done a heap of work. I know, you know, I've got a pretty fair idea how much work they've put into this. With the assistance of Gamal and Vincent. Vincent was instrumental in integrating the interval data into the analysis. But I just know that the amount of work that these guys have done to make this happen has been phenomenal. So thank you to them. So that's about the end of what we've got to present, but more than happy to take on some questions. And Sam, like Sam's there as well, and he can maybe give some insights into some of his results now that he's seen some genomic results on his cows. I noticed he's got a couple of pretty high ones. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions that they want to throw out there, by all means, now's the time to do it.
Well, I'd like to know what Sam's going to do, having looked at the results so far. What sort of decisions has he made or thinking about making?
Yeah, initially, Leanne, we have had a group of bulls, and a few young bulls have already been culled. Another bull's been selected by an AB company. So yeah, that happened straight within a week of the first lot of tests coming. So that made a big difference for us. I'm not having to keep a few extra bulls, and yeah, so that was just one way that affected us in the last month.
Because I guess the observation too, Sam, is that you've been a great contributor to help us get to where we have with hair samples. But the whole thing is now, part of this is actually you getting a bang for your buck. So it's not so much helping industry, it's actually what you do on farm to make a better job of breeding your cows. So you can be selfish now and actually use it to benefit your own rather than benefit all.
Well, the good thing is it does both, Peter. I think it helps us and helps the breed.
Absolutely, yes.
Sure, there's some more questions from farmers out there or service providers. If anyone else has got questions, I feel I've talked too much.
Well, I have a question about the reliabilities of the breeding values. Is it that what you did expect? There's a difference from genomic tested animals to non-genomic tested animals from around about 10% only, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's, and again, Hurt might want to comment on this as well, but you know, they were the averages, and when I looked at the range, there were certainly some animals that were benefiting a whole lot more than that 10 or 15%, and there were others that, you know, probably weren't getting a lot of bounce, and I think that that's probably due to their relationship with our reference population. And again, I think that's you know, because we're on a journey here rather than, you know, starting with a big monstrous reference population, that we're probably going to get that variance in reliability response once we genomically test. But Hurt may want to add to that.
Yeah, I think, Pete, you answered that. The number of genotyped animals with observations is quite limited still in the red breed group, so that holding that back. But with every additional animal genotype, that will improve.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
I feel like it's a starting point. Yeah, starting, and we're going to build on that. Yeah, as we get more cows and heifers tested, it'll improve the reliability, and then the genomics will get a bigger boost on parent average or non-genomic cows.
And just a comment to show what we've seen in particularly the uptake in other breeds, we're also getting considerable interest with farmers wanting to test their own bulls. So for instance, Sam, if you're running a program, you do an AI program and then you run your red bull, if you've also genomically tested your red bull, which is no difficult than doing your cows, if you genomic test your red bull, that gives us so much more accuracy when you do the calves. We can tell you exactly which calf belonged to which bull, but beyond that too, we can also tell you how good your bull is. So you may not, he might be a good one, or he may not be so good. So there's huge advantage in farmers actually looking to genomic test their herd bulls as well.
Okay, is there any other questions?
Yeah, Pete, it's Carmel again. I've had a few customers that are they're not Aussie red breeders, but they are red breeders. So they're just questioning, I guess, what the results they'll get back. So if they're milking shorthorns or Ayrshires versus the Aussie reds, and all these animals are in the same evaluation pool, is how relevant that's going to be to their specific breed. Because are you comparing apples and oranges, or are you comparing apples and apples, I guess is the question there.
Yeah. So obviously the value is relative to the amount of animals each breed's got in the reference population. And, you know, as I said earlier, we're working on improving the connectivity for the Ayrshire breeders and the Illawarra breeders to try and get more of their animals in the reference population. We know that they'll also benefit from the Aussie red, you know, having the Aussie reds and the Scandinavian reds in there as well, because there's between all of these groups, there's a relative, you know, reasonable degree of connectivity. But, you know, to really empower the evaluations for those other breeds, it's important that we keep continuing to try and find more genotypes for their animals and get them into the system. The key thing for, you know, if you're an Illawarra breeder, for example, is your results are going to be all relative to the other animals within your herd. So you still get the power of the genomic evaluation, because you're only, you know, you're really only comparing your animals within your herd. So it's still relevant to you. You know, how your animals compare to somebody else's herd from a management perspective is really neither here nor there. It's how your animals compare to you, you know, how they rank within your herd that's the most important outcome.
And to add to that too, Pete, the important part across those other breeds, Carmel, is that we run parent validation equally across all breeds. So you are getting the feedback on whether or not that calf is by that bull very accurately for those other breeds as well.
Thank you both.
Mr. Williams, it's Don Ross here. Can we just go back to the triangle a little bit? The bulls that have improved, how much Holstein are in those bulls?
It's a good question. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Most of the Aussie red bulls these days, Sam, have got very little Holstein in them. The Illawarras probably have a slightly different view in terms of Holstein content. And the Ayrshires, I don't think have got any Holstein whatsoever, pretty much in them. So yeah, there's not a significant amount of Holstein in the.
Looking at that list, Peter, from the ones I would recognise, I think would be looking at under 5% Holstein in those ones in that small triangle over 250 to 300.
Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions? Otherwise, we might wrap it up there if that's if there's no one else.
I suppose just a closing comment, Pete, from DataGene, is that we do really thank all those breeders that have had extreme patience, that have worked with us over those many years. Sam pulling hair and Graham pulling hair quite some time ago. We did get results, which was fantastic. But the real excitement with genomics is that it allows you to identify the best young bulls and the best young heifers. So it really shortens the generation interval. So we're seeing some huge gains by people making accurate decisions at a young age. And the excitement, particularly in those breeds that have genomics, is just, it's really great to get access to those young genetics and take advantage of them really quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I think that's, yeah, as we said earlier, the earlier you use this technology, the more benefit you get from it. So, well, thank you everybody for joining us today. It's been really, really good to circle back with many of you that were online previously through our webinars, and it's just great that this has finally come to fruition, and we can plough ahead and make a bit more genetic progress for the red breed group, and yeah, hopefully you'll all be able to get some benefit from it. So thank you for your contributions, and thanks for coming online today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
And thank you too for the international friends who've joined us.
Yes, yeah, that was a bit of a surprise, to be honest. Nice to see people from overseas interested in what we're doing.
Thank you very much, Peter.